Hello everyone, my name is Zenitsu and I'm back with another Digimon video. So I guess today's kind of going to be like a spoilers slash news video. So we did get a new card spoiled from the new starter decks that are going to be coming out in Japan that are based around Imperial Dramon and Mastimon. And we finally get not just one, but I guess technically two new mechanics that are introduced in this one spoiler. And it's looking like these starter decks are going to be really strong and have lots of depth and variety that they could further expand upon later. So what I mean by this is that we could see that Mastimon over here, yes, she does Evo like she normally does off of the two colors that she's going to be interacting with, but on top of the fact that we could see in her name that we actually do get a true two-color Digimon. So before, they've always done two colors where it was just attached to an ability where it only triggers while the Digimon is in the battle area, and it usually will just count as the other color. Now we actually have a Digimon that fulfills both requirements for both of the colors, so it's both colors at all times. So if you do say check this card in your security off of TK's ability, then you will be able to grab it because it is technically a yellow Digimon. And on top of that, if you want to bring it back with something like Matt's ability, then you will also be able to do that because it is also a purple Digimon. Whereas all of the other cards, they needed to be on the field in order to count as their other color. This does not. So this is both a good thing and I guess a bad thing for the game as a whole. It's really nice that we do get this type of a card just because it allows us to mix and match and make more synergies and crazy things possible. But at the same time, if they do this too much and if they do this too often, it could actually ruin what color identity means for the game, and that line is already very thin as is based on how the memory system works as a whole. So if they do this too much, it could break the game, but as we see, if they just do it every now and then, seldomly, I think it would be really nice just to have some new ways to build some new and exciting decks with it, just because this could spice things up on what you could do with it. And then on top of that, it also has the brand new ability of DNA Digivolution, or Jogress Digivolution. So what this ability is doing is you get to place this card on top of a level 5 purple Digimon and a level 5 yellow Digimon for an Evo cost of 0. So if you just have two level 5s that are of each of the colors, then you just stick them underneath Mastimon when you digivolve them into Mastimon. So you're essentially doing what Digimon kind of initially meant to do with Jogress's beforehand, was just fusing the Digimon. So you do combine their stacks when you Jogress into this version of Mastimon, and the Digimon, if they were in a suspended state, then you get to unsuspend this Digimon. So you essentially could attack with both of the level 5s if both of the level 5s live through the security or live through whatever battles they're going to be participating in. Then you could digivolve both of them suspended into this Mastimon, and she'll unsuspend herself, getting a third attack out. So that's looking to be pretty powerful already, and it's kind of an interesting ability to be playing around with, because I don't know if exactly it's going to be super good or not, because you're essentially losing one of your Digimon to this ability, even though you could make some very powerful and very crazy stacks with it. It doesn't seem like it's going to be the best at all times, and you really have to like build and tailor make it your deck so that you could do this, because as we see with Digimon, there's just a lot of removal in the game, so trying to keep a level 5 body out just to have another one in raising to make a instant Mastimon is looking to be quite a lot to do. Granted, there are some ways to mitigate this, and I do think the later the game goes, if you do have your proper tamer set up, then this is actually going to be relatively easy, just because you could turbo up into a level 5, then fuse them into Mastimon, and then have Mastimon do a lot of work, because this card's also really powerful because of both of its abilities. So the Jogress or DNA Digivolution mechanic is looking to be a relatively strong mechanic, and there is just a handful of Jogress Digimon, so it's not like we're going to see this ability that often, but it does give hope to seeing all of the Jogresses that we already did get in the game get a new iteration and new version utilizing this type of mechanic, to give even more diverse tools to a lot of different colors and create a lot of new and exciting decks just because of all of those color combinations that they could possibly do. So I'm really excited to see where they go forward with this mechanic in the future, and I do think that this mechanic is going to be a relatively strong mechanic to be playing around with. Now, as far as what Mastimon is doing as a whole, this card is actually looking to be really strong, considering it's a starter deck card. So what this card is doing is it actually has some relatively large stats. So it has a play cost of 13, which is actually important, so that way it could dodge Omnimon's warts and some various other removals. It has a digivolution cost of 5 on both yellow and purple, so it's a rather large digivolution cost, but I'm sure we have ways to mitigate that and gain some memory back when we're digivolving into it to make it a little bit more of an easier pill to swallow. But 5 isn't necessarily that bad because of all of the different ways we have to gain memory, so it's not like it's the worst cost in the world, and it does come with the upside of having 13,000 DP, so its DP is naturally larger than a lot of the other Digimon, so it's going to have an easier time aggressing and being a hard card to deal with. So it's looking stat-wise to already be really, really powerful for a level 6, and on top of that, it has 2 abilities of its own. So its first ability is a when digivolving ability, where we get to place a yellow or purple Digimon from our trash onto the top of our security stack face down. So it's interacting with the security similar to how Cherubimon was interacting with security all the way back in BT03, except this is on a when digivolving and not on a trash ability, so you could line up your security Digimon utilizing this ability if you really feel like it, or you could just put whatever Digimon you feel like you want to put on the top of security on the top, so that way it could be really annoying and disruptive for the opponent depending on the situation. And then on top of that, it also has an additional part to this when digivolving ability, where if we digivolve this card using the DNA digivolution mechanic, then we get to look at our security stack and then play a level 5 or lower Digimon from our security stack for free. Note, we do get its on play ability, and this is looking to be pretty good because that ability coincides with its second ability, where during all turns, when we play another Digimon through a card effect, then we get to delete one of the opponent's Digimon with the same level or less than the Digimon we just played. So this is looking to be really, really powerful because if we digivolve her using the DNA digivolution mechanic, then we're going to be able to use her second ability to delete a level 5 or lower, and then we do have lots of ways of free playing our Digimon in both yellow and purple to just be able to delete a wide variety of targets. There's just a lot of potential things and synergies that this card has already just based on both of those abilities alone, making this card seem really, really strong. And not to mention, we do have a whole entire starter deck that's going to be dedicated to supporting this card, so it's going to have some way or shape or form to probably make the DNA digivolution mechanic even easier to play that we're unaware of, on top of various other synergies that help us play our cards to make this card as strong as she could be based on what the starter deck is going to be doing. And then on top of that, we do have the Imperial Dramon to think about on how they could utilize this mechanic, considering I do think Imperial Dramon, if the DNA Digivolution is going to be on Pail Dramon, will have an easier time to trigger this type of ability, just because we do have more tools and options for them to actually utilize it based on all of the other Imperial Dramon stuff that we currently have. So it'll be really, really exciting to see what these decks are going to be holding in the future when we get more cards revealed. So moving on to the news part of the video, we did get, I guess, not really an official announcement, but like a unofficial announcement that BT06 Double Diamond is going to be getting a delay. We kind of already had suspected that there was going to be a delay, considering they kept changing their words and their messages from a exact October date to just an October window, and then they started removing the October window on a lot of their posts to just not even include when the set is going to be released. So I don't know exactly when they're going to make an announcement that BT06 Double Diamond is going to be delayed, but as far as we could tell based on distributor websites, it looks like it got delayed all the way to November 19th. So that's a little bit unfortunate, considering it looks like the Classic Collection still has the December 3rd release date, so we don't get a whole lot of time of Double Diamond before the meta starts shifting to Classic Collection. Granted, because Classic Collection is a lot smaller of a set, it's not like the meta is going to change that much, but still, it would be nice to have a little bit more time to be playing around with Double Diamond as a whole, and not include the supplement of the Classic Collection. But while we're on the topic of distributors, I believe this image was taken from Alliance, and we could see that stores are only paying about $57 for a booster box of Digimon. So the fact that stores are still trying to sell the product for 90 to 100 to even still $100+ is kind of unacceptable, considering we know what they're paying for their booster boxes. And usually it is in a store's best interest to have a happy and returning customer rather than try to scalp them out of the product and to try to make as much money out of it as they possibly can. Most of the time, stores want that retention because that means they'll be able to sell that customer more product in the future, on top of having them pay for events and various other supplies. So it's usually in a store's best interest to only sell probably between 15 to 30% upcharge of what they paid for. So I personally wouldn't buy a booster box of Digimon that's more than $85, and even at $85, I think that's still on the high end, and I would be very reluctant to pay $85 for a booster box of Digimon, given the way the secondary market has been behaving and reacting towards having an actual decent amount of supply of each of the products available. So really quickly, hopping over to TCG Player, because that's what I use to gauge where the secondary market is at and what the secondary market is doing, we could take a look and see that Double Diamond, the booster box pre-sale price, is going down. It should continue to go down as we get closer and closer to release, just because we know how the secondary market is going to react to the set, because the set, from a card perspective, is not going to be doing anything different than Battle of Omni. I think like the alt art amount is changed ever so slightly, and there's one more SR in the set than there was in Battle of Omni, but for the most part, the pull rates should be relatively the same, and if they are the same, or at least very, very, very similar, then we could gauge what the singles prices are going to be at. So the fact that we have pre-sale prices on cards like Agumon Bond of Courage and Gabumon Bond of Friendship pre-selling for $43 should be very alarming and very concerning, considering these are SRs in the set and we know what a base SR is going to be performing like. And the same can be said with a lot of the other rarities too, so the fact that Matt and Ty are pre-selling for $25 should be very, very concerning, considering these are rares. So you're going to see at least one of these per booster box, and that just doesn't make sense on having them pre-sale for $25 if you know you're going to be guaranteed to get one in a booster box. Same thing with the uncommons. Uncommons should not be this much. The only exception to the rule should be this version of Eosmon, because if you are buying and building the Eosmon deck, then you will need more of this Eosmon versus any of the other cards in the entire set. But I digress. The fact that we have rares and super rares selling for extremely high prices should be something you should not be buying into, because that's just not smart, because we already know how these cards are going to be performing. So what I mean by we already know how these cards are going to be performing like is we do have past data to look upon. So we could see that the best-selling base SR is Lilithmon at $22. She is just currently the highest base rarity SR that we currently have. So the fact that these are already pre-selling more than her, and she has a harder to pull rate because of the booster box that she was in, should be very, very concerning. And we could see that even a lot of the alt arts aren't performing as well as what these cards are currently pre-listed as. So the alt art versions probably are going to be around the $20 to $30 range. So that's just what we should be expecting out of the alt arts, not the base rarity versions. So the fact that we have the base rarity version selling so high or pre-selling so high should be very concerning, because even if we just take a look at the second most expensive base SR, we can see that it's Omnimon at $15. So SRs just are not worth as much as people might give them credit for. So if we just continue to scroll and take a look at what the secondary market is doing with a lot of the SRs, we can see that it looks like your average SR is going to be around that $5 to $10 range for a good base SR. So even again on the high end, we have some other cards that are just hitting that $10 mark, and then everything else is just below that $10 mark. So the fact that we know that a SR is going to be a usually high end of $10, no matter what the pull prevalency is, because again, we have cards that are harder to pull that are also still not worth as much as they should be, means that the pre-sale prices on the SRs for Double Diamond shouldn't be as high as they are. I could go through and do the same exact thing with all of the rares, where the majority of the rares aren't going to be worth anything, if anything at all, so you should not be pre-buying these cards for these exuberantly high prices. And we could see the booster box prices are slowly adjusting and normalizing to what they should be based on what the secondary market is performing like. So we could see because the singles are so cheap, the booster boxes prices should be going down just because there's less and less value to be opened up in the set, and there's just a whole bunch of singles already floating around on the secondary market, not incentivizing people to want to crack open a box and try to flip it or increase the amount of supply in the secondary market just because the cards aren't worth opening. So when that happens, usually the booster box prices will come down to a more reasonable level to where it actually is worth opening a booster box, and we could see that happening with all of the other booster boxes. We saw that BT04 Great Legend did have a really big downturn just because the value wasn't there, and now because some of the cards are actually appreciating a little bit, mostly in the secret rare slot, its value is going slightly up, where Battle of Omni is continuing to fall just because it's not worth opening a booster box of Battle of Omni because there's like no value in the booster box outside of literally one secret rare. So we could see that the booster boxes are starting to normalize to a more reasonable price, and as we saw before on the little distributor slide, that they're only paying an average of like $57 a booster box. So even at selling for $70 and $75, they're still making a decent amount of profits to continue to do this type of a business. So I said it before, but I'll say it again just to reiterate and hammer it home that you should almost never be buying Digimon cards singles-wise on presale because you are only getting scammed. As far as the last big news update, we actually did get another Errata, and this is actually coming from a BT04 card and not a card coming out in the future that they mistranslated. So this is them fixing a translation that they missed previously, and that is going to be on Kudamon. So this version of Kudamon was mistranslated or misprinted to where they forgot to put for the end of the turn part. So the way it currently reads is it's a permanent minus 2000 DP boost that persists forever. So they just added the part where it only lasts for the end of the turn. So just a simple little mistake, but regardless, it's nice and important to know that this card does not last indefinitely anymore, and it is until the end of the turn. So that's all I really have for this video. As always, feel free to tell me your thoughts down in the comments below, and down in the description below are a couple of different ways you could support me and the channel. So I do have a TCG Player affiliate link, so when you use that link to buy cards off of TCG Player, then some of that money will go to supporting me and the channel. I also do make and sell playmats over on Overcard Gamers on Facebook, so when you buy a playmat with my design, then some of that money will also go to help supporting me and the channel. And on top of all of that, I do have a Twitch account over on twitch.tv/Zenitsu, so giving me a follow and a subscription also helps support me there, and I do play Digimon on top of various other games on that platform as well. So thank you everyone for watching, and as always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content, and I'll see you in the next video.